There's something about the way memories resurface when you least expect them. Sometimes, they feel like warm reminders of how far you've come. Other times, they're like a blade, cutting through whatever peace you've managed to build. For me, it started with a Facebook notification on a quiet Saturday morning, 1 year ago today. I clicked it without thinking. It opened to a photo I hadn't seen in months, a golden, dreamlike shot from Tulum. There I was, arm in arm with Lena, walking along the shoreline just as the sun melted into the horizon. Her head tilted slightly toward me, her smile soft, eyes squinting at the light. She looked happy. I looked content. The kind of couple people envy from a distance. Back then, that moment had felt real. I remembered the warm sand between our toes, how she'd pulled me away from our resort's crowded beach to a quieter cove she had accidentally found while exploring. I remembered how she held my hand tighter than usual and laughed at things I barely said. I remember thinking, maybe this trip is the reboot we needed. So I reposted the picture. Added a caption that came to me without much thought, something simple, honest, maybe a little naive. 1 year ago today. Grateful for love that lasts. I put my phone down after that, grabbed my coffee, and went to check on the slow-cooking ribs outside. The sun was out, the yard looked decent, and I was finally feeling good about something. That feeling lasted less than 5 minutes. When I came back inside, the screen on my phone lit up with a message request, someone I didn't know. The profile picture showed a guy about my age, probably late 30s, sharp jawline, windblown hair. The message was short. 7 words that changed everything. No name, no preamble, no explanation, just a quiet detonation in my chest. The attached photo took a second to load, but once it did, the air left the room. Same shoreline. Same time of day. Same background. But this time, Lena wasn't with me. She was in the lap of a man I didn't recognize. Her head was thrown back in laughter, hair tangled in the breeze, a wine glass tilted in her hand like she hadn't a care in the world. Her left hand rested on his chest. Naked. No ring. I stared at the image, trying to find something, anything, that would make it make sense. Maybe it was old. Maybe it was photoshopped. Maybe it wasn't her. But the second I zoomed in, there was no denying it. That was Lena's sun hat. Lena's birthmark just below her collarbone. Lena's unmistakable smile. That photo wasn't old. It was recent. And it was from the exact same week we were in Tulum together. My mind started rewinding like a broken tape, back to that trip, the small things I'd ignored. The solo spa visits. The days she said she wasn't feeling well and stayed behind. The fact that she'd picked the location herself, insisted on it, even though we had originally planned on Hawaii. I thought she just wanted something different. I didn't realize different meant someone else. I scrolled back to our shared album from the trip. Noticed for the first time that she had very few photos of us together. Most were landscape shots, or me by myself. I hadn't questioned it then. I figured she just wasn't into taking pictures. But now, I saw it for what it was, she was careful. Selective. Hiding in plain sight. As the realization spread through me, a strange kind of nausea settled in my stomach. Not the kind that hits you all at once, but a slow, crawling unease that takes up residence and refuses to leave. I kept flipping back and forth between the 2 photos. Ours looked like a magazine cover. Theirs looked like a secret. It wasn't just the image. It was everything the image implied. While I was pouring my heart into a marriage I thought we were saving, she was sneaking off to meet another man, on the same trip. She didn't even wait until we were back home. It wasn't an affair hidden in another state or some distant hotel on a business trip. It was right there. While I was sunburned and sipping overpriced margaritas on the balcony, she was in someone else's arms. Probably just down the shoreline. And the ring, the absence of it felt like a slap. Not just a betrayal of vows, but a calculated erasure of them. She knew exactly what she was doing. I should have felt rage, but all I felt in that moment was numb. Numb and stupid. Because I'd loved her blindly. Defended her when others hinted she was self-centered. Worked overtime to support her when she said she wanted to start fresh in her career. Swallowed my pride when she dismissed my concerns about her late-night work sessions with just friends. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. I wanted to be the guy who believed in his wife. And what did that get me? A viral photo waiting to happen and a marriage built on well-lit lies. I didn't reply to the message. I didn't even save the picture. I just sat there, the air growing thick around me, the silence louder than anything I'd ever heard. I didn't know who Caleb Walker was yet, but I already knew he'd seen a side of Lena I hadn't. A side she reserved for someone who wasn't me. And in the pit of my stomach, I knew that if there was one photo, there were more. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't a mistake. This was a performance. And I was just the one paying for front row seats. Whatever came next, I wouldn't be posting about love that lasts. I'd be finding out just how far the lies went, and making sure the world saw the whole picture. Derek had always believed that patterns told stories. As a systems engineer, he made a living by detecting subtle inconsistencies in complex frameworks, bugs, misalignments, things that didn't belong. Now, sitting at his dining table at 3 a.m. with nothing but the glow of his laptop and the slow burn of disbelief, he began applying that same precision to his own life. It started with Lena's calendar. She had always been protective of her schedule, color-coded blocks of time marked self-care, client consult, or creative planning. It used to make him admire her organization. Now it made him suspicious. He began going back, week by week, comparing what she told him with what she had actually done. He cross-checked photos she had posted with timestamps, used metadata from their shared iCloud folder, and pulled bank statements from their joint account. What had once seemed like the rhythm of a modern couple, a little space, a little independence, now looked like camouflage. Things didn't add up. There was a charge for a luxury spa she claimed to have visited during their Tulum trip. But the location didn't match. She'd posted a photo of a green smoothie and a white robe with a tropical view, yet the transaction was from a wellness center miles away, one attached to a different hotel altogether. He dug deeper, locating a geotag she'd forgotten to scrub. It placed her exactly where Caleb's resort was. Not only had she lied about the location, she'd carefully constructed a false narrative around it. Then came the night of the cancelled boat excursion. He remembered it vividly. Derek had booked a sunset catamaran tour as a surprise. Lena had emerged from the bathroom pale-faced, claiming food poisoning and begging him to go alone. He'd waited with her, rubbed her back as she lay in bed, even ordered electrolyte drinks and soup. She insisted he enjoy the trip anyway. He didn't. He spent the night worrying in their room while she rested. Now he knew, she hadn't been sick. She had simply left. The phone location data was irrefutable. Her device had traveled nearly an hour north that evening, stayed stationary near a beachfront boutique resort until 1 a.m., then returned to their hotel. She'd even messaged him from the ride back, claiming she was finally feeling better and asking if he could bring her water. The lie was seamless. Too seamless. And then came the receipts, actual, literal ones. While cleaning out a cabinet in their home office, Derek found a folded envelope from a travel booking site. Inside were printed confirmations for a second room in Tulum. Same week. Different name on the reservation. Caleb Walker. Paid in full on their joint credit card. Lena had paid for Caleb's room, with his money. That was the moment things stopped feeling surreal and started feeling surgical. She hadn't just cheated. She had executed a plan. Crafted a facade. Staged a vacation as a cover story. Posted smiling photos and heartfelt captions to throw off any suspicion. She had curated her betrayal with the same care she used to plan their anniversaries. It wasn't an affair born of passion, it was a deception maintained with discipline. Derek went cold. He pulled out an old external drive and began backing up every file, messages, photos, emails. There were screenshots, export logs, GPS records. A spreadsheet grew on his desktop, listing every inconsistency like evidence on a crime board. And as the pieces started falling into place, so did the timeline of Caleb. The name hadn't immediately rung a bell, but it gnawed at him. He eventually searched through old emails and stumbled on one from 6 years ago, before the wedding. An exchange between Lena and her maid of honor about a man she had been engaged to once. She'd called him Caleb the Complication. Said she ended it after he cheated on her with a coworker. Said she'd never look back. But clearly, she had. Derek pulled up Caleb's LinkedIn. He recognized the smirking face from the message profile. Caleb was a life coach now, with a feed full of motivational nonsense about authentic energy and living with radical intention. Derek's stomach turned. There were posts from exotic destinations, clips from seminars, and yes, photos from Tulum. Most had been archived, probably after Derek's post went viral, but the internet forgets nothing. Archived versions revealed everything, the same week, the same hotel, the same beach. There were more photos. Derek hadn't been the only one taking snapshots. In one, Lena was dancing barefoot in the sand with Caleb. In another, they were sharing a hammock. Her head rested on his chest. She looked completely at ease, completely unburdened, nothing like the woman who had returned home from that trip claiming she was exhausted and needed space to reset. She had reset, all right, just not with her husband. Even the beach photo, the one that started it all, now seemed sickening in its intent. The angle, the lighting, the soft expression. Derek remembered how she had asked a local guide to take that picture. She had insisted they wait until the light was just right. She had told him it would be the one they used for their Christmas card. But that photo, he now realized, wasn't for them. It was insurance. A PR move. A post scheduled for future use to keep suspicions quiet. She had posed with him hours before slipping off to meet Caleb. It wasn't just betrayal. It was performance art. As Derek stared at his screen, the absurdity of it all hit him. While he had been busy trying to revive their intimacy, booking trips, initiating date nights, doing everything a good husband is supposed to do, Lena had already checked out. Emotionally. Mentally. Physically. The signs had been there, hiding in routine, her sudden need for solo retreats, her emotional distance, her newfound obsession with personal boundaries. He'd mistaken them for signs of self-care. In reality, they were boundaries meant to keep him out. The house felt colder now. Every inch of it reminded him of her, of who he thought she was, and who she actually turned out to be. Her decorative touches suddenly felt performative. Even the scent of her favorite candle made him nauseous. He sat in silence for hours, not even noticing when the sun began to rise. He wasn't just grieving the marriage. He was grieving the idea of Lena, the person he thought he knew. The woman who had once sobbed in his arms after a rough client meeting. The woman who had danced with him in their kitchen to 90s pop songs. He realized now that he didn't know which parts were real and which were rehearsed. And the worst part? She still didn't know he knew. She was still going about her life, planning her next weekend away, probably messaging Caleb from her locked phone while Derek folded laundry downstairs. The deception was ongoing. But Derek was done being in the dark. He didn't know what his next move would be yet, but he knew this, he wouldn't confront her emotionally. There would be no shouting match, no emotional appeal, no plea for honesty. He wasn't interested in giving her a chance to lie her way out of it. She had played her hand. All he needed now was the right moment to show the world what she'd been hiding behind that picture-perfect smile. There's a strange silence that descends once you know the truth but choose to keep it to yourself. Not denial, clarity. Derek moved through that silence like a man wading through deep water, careful not to make ripples. While Lena performed the part of a loving wife, he became her quiet observer. She didn't know she was on stage, but every step, every breath, every calculated smile was now part of a play he could no longer pretend to enjoy. Publicly, she was radiant. At dinner parties, she clung to Derek's arm, called him her rock, and laughed just a little louder when she mentioned how lucky she was. She posted old photos with over-the-top captions, strategically tagging him in filtered throwbacks meant to reinforce the illusion of bliss. Friends left heart emojis and comments about #marriage goals, completely unaware that behind the screen, she was already packing emotionally for a new life. Late at night, Derek would wake to the light from her phone glowing across their sheets. She'd face away, thumbs moving fast, screen tilted just enough to stay private. If he stirred, she'd lock it instantly, tuck it under her pillow, and murmur something about checking emails or scrolling mindlessly. But the shift in her behavior wasn't subtle, not to him. She was changing passwords on accounts they once shared. Removing his fingerprint from her phone. Deleting search history. Hiding receipts in coat pockets or behind books on the living room shelf. Each move whispered a message: she was hiding things, and she didn't believe he would notice. But Derek noticed everything now. He started tracking her. Not in the sense of surveillance, but observation. Dates, locations, inconsistencies. He marked the weekends she was at retreats, and compared them to event pages for design expos and seminars she never actually attended. The truth unfolded slowly: she was spending weekends in places she had no business being, visiting neighborhoods she once claimed to dislike. Always just enough detail to sound plausible. But the timeline didn't lie, and neither did the data. He couldn't sleep. The woman next to him, the one he had built a life with, now felt like a stranger with a familiar face. Every time she laughed, it sounded hollow. Every hug, rehearsed. She still kissed his cheek before work and texted him sweet nothings during the day, but they felt mechanical, like she was checking off a list titled, "Things Wives Should Say." He'd replay those little gestures in his mind, wondering how long she had been acting. When had she stopped meaning the things she said? The more he reflected, the more tainted the memories became. He thought of the night she cried in the kitchen when her first big client backed out, and how he'd held her until her breathing calmed. He remembered selling his vintage truck, the one he'd spent 2 years restoring, to help fund the launch of her design business. She'd called him her hero that night. Told him she'd never forget what he sacrificed for her. Now he wondered if she meant any of it, or if those moments were just carefully placed scenes in a story she had always intended to walk away from. Then came the document. It was an accident that he found it. She'd left her iPad on the couch, screen still lit. He wasn't even snooping that night, just picking it up to place it on the charger. But the open file caught his eye. A legal draft, clearly in progress. It took him a few seconds to understand what he was looking at: a prenup. Only, it wasn't their prenup. They never had one. It had been backdated, carefully, to make it look as though it had been signed years ago. It outlined separate financial accounts, asset divisions, clauses about property and intellectual rights to her brand. Derek scrolled through in stunned silence, each line of legal jargon slicing deeper than the last. The language was clinical, intentional, and chilling in its precision. It wasn't just a plan to leave. It was a plan to erase him. A few pages later, he found emails, again, not addressed to him. These were sent to a real estate agent, someone Lena had been in contact with for months. They discussed timing the market, keeping inquiries discreet, and using a private listing service to avoid public eyes. She hadn't just thought about selling the house, they had actively narrowed down the timeline. According to one of the messages, she planned to list as soon as their mortgage was finalized. Less than 6 months away. That house wasn't just brick and wood to Derek. It was where he'd proposed to her in the backyard during a thunderstorm. Where they'd painted the nursery that stayed empty after they lost their first pregnancy. It was supposed to be their forever home, built from years of sacrifice. And now, it was just another piece of the puzzle Lena intended to quietly sell off while he was still under the illusion that they were happy. Derek sat with that reality for a long time. She had built an entire future without him, and was slowly extracting him from the present. Not with drama, not with open conflict, but through silence and smiles, perfectly timed affection, and a well-maintained narrative. She wasn't going to walk out in a flurry of arguments. She was going to slip away, paperwork in hand, while he still thought they were in the middle of something worth saving. He realized she'd even planned her exit to minimize mess. To make herself look like the one who tried. She'd crafted the optics. The Instagram stories, the couple photos, the mutual friends she kept close, everything was designed to control the perception. So that when she left, it wouldn't be abandonment. It would be drifting apart. She would float through it untarnished, while he would be the confused, unstable one who must have done something to push her away. But that wouldn't happen. Derek wasn't confused. Not anymore. The fog had lifted. Every piece of her double life was now in his hands, arranged neatly into a digital folder, complete with documents, timelines, and undeniable evidence. She thought he was too trusting to notice. Too gentle to react. She had mistaken patience for ignorance. Derek didn't shout. He didn't cry. He didn't throw accusations across the room. He simply became quiet. Focused. And while Lena continued to post loving photos of the two of them, filtered and framed, he worked quietly in the background, dismantling the illusion she thought she controlled. He knew now that confrontation would only give her power. She'd twist it, weaponize it, paint him as unhinged. But silence? Silence gave him the upper hand. And as he watched her go through the motions of a wife already halfway out the door, he didn't feel broken. He felt ready. She had written her story, carefully crafted to end on her terms. But Derek had the real version. And when the time came, he'd make sure the world saw it. Unedited. Unfiltered. Unmistakably true. Derek had always believed in evidence. Not just as a professional, but as a person. Data didn't lie. Stories could be twisted, voices could tremble with well-timed tears, but timestamps, digital footprints, raw facts, they stood still when emotions ran wild. And now, as he sat in his home office with a drive full of secrets, he knew he held something Lena couldn't spin or erase. For weeks, he worked in silence. He built his case methodically, almost clinically. Every document had a folder. Every image had metadata. Every message had a context. Nothing was altered, nothing exaggerated. He wasn't interested in embellishment. The truth, as it stood, was damning enough. There were hundreds of screenshots, some showing flirtatious texts between Lena and Caleb, others revealing hotel reservations booked under her design business name but paid with their joint card. He'd found emails with fake subject lines, carefully hidden beneath project updates. She'd masked them under client follow-up and invoicing, but inside were meetups, future plans, coded language that grew less subtle the deeper their affair went. He even dug deeper, using recovery tools and cloud-based backups to retrieve what she had tried to delete, old chat logs, photo drafts, even location pings she must have thought had vanished with a reset. Nothing was ever really gone. He pulled up calendar entries marked with emojis that made sense only now, receipts from lunch spots near Caleb's apartment, and rideshare histories that contradicted everything she'd told him. When the evidence reached critical mass, he copied everything into a master folder labeled July 14th, their next wedding anniversary. He reached out to a lawyer friend under the pretense of a hypothetical scenario. It wasn't about lawsuits yet, it was about understanding his leverage. The answer was clear: with what he had, he could decimate her in court. Financially, reputationally. But Derek wasn't in this for revenge in the traditional sense. He didn't want to ruin Lena. He wanted to strip away the illusion, her carefully curated identity. He wanted the truth to live in the same places her lies had once flourished, in the open. The beach photo was still saved in his phone, the one from last year's vacation, the one where they looked like the world's most in-love couple. It was sunset. They were barefoot. Lena's head rested against his shoulder, her hand linked in his. That image had racked up hundreds of likes. Friends had shared it. Strangers had commented on their unshakable bond. He used to look at that photo and feel warmth. Now, it made his stomach turn. He opened the image in an editing app and placed it side by side with the one Caleb had sent him, the exact same setting, same day, same dress. Only this time, Lena was straddling Caleb's lap, laughing as he kissed her neck, her wedding ring nowhere in sight. Side by side, the photos told a story more powerful than any caption ever could. Derek stared at the final composite for a long time before typing the words he'd been turning over in his head for weeks. She told me it was a yoga class. I told the camera it was the happiest day of my life. One photo. Two lies. He hit post. The eruption wasn't instant, but it was steady and relentless. Within the first hour, mutual friends messaged him privately. By the third hour, the post had been shared 50 times. The comments started as expressions of disbelief, then shifted into outrage, heartbreak, and betrayal. By midnight, the story had spilled far beyond their inner circle. Strangers from across the internet began tagging it with captions like, "This is why I have trust issues," and "Proof that Instagram lies." A TikTok creator with a large following broke down the post in a dramatic voiceover, stitching images of Lena's wife life aesthetic with the screenshots from Derek's post. The video hit 200K views by morning. Reddit threads dissected every detail, labeling the story #Beachgate. The nickname stuck. So did the judgment. Lena's business account took the first hit. Several clients pulled out of active projects. One left a lengthy public comment about values and professional integrity. Another reshared Derek's post with a blunt caption about truth always catching up. Her brand, built on trust and relatability, unraveled overnight. Design sponsors pulled back. Collaborations froze. In the days that followed, Lena posted a shaky statement about mental health, attempting to redirect the narrative to a personal struggle. But it was too late. Derek's post had become the source. The comments didn't let up. They called out her lies, dissected the timeline, and questioned every curated image she'd ever posted. People dug up old vacation photos, comparing outfits and geotags. Someone even created a Lena's Lies Instagram account dedicated to archiving the evolution of her deception. The internet was cruel, but it was efficient. And Caleb? The motivational coach with the clean-cut image? His fallout was just as swift. His brand centered on authentic living, radical honesty, and building trust in relationships. Derek didn't have to say a word, his post was enough to expose the contradiction. Caleb's accounts vanished within days. His personal site redirected to an error page. Whatever speaking gigs or seminars he had lined up, gone. He disappeared like a man who realized his spotlight had turned into a searchlight. Lena tried to salvage her side in private. She reached out to mutual friends, pushing a version of events where Derek had misunderstood everything. That he'd been distant. That their marriage was already falling apart. But every denial was met with facts, screenshots, receipts, records. No amount of emotional storytelling could compete with irrefutable proof. Her parents called Derek through tears, apologizing. They hadn't known. Or maybe they had, and simply hadn't wanted to see it. Either way, they were devastated by what their daughter had become. Her sister texted Derek as well, asking if there was more. But he didn't respond. He'd already said all he needed to say. One post. That was all it took. Derek didn't gloat. He didn't post updates, didn't do interviews, didn't bask in the chaos. He simply let the story unfold without him. He returned to work, kept a low profile, and allowed the truth to spread on its own. His silence spoke louder than any follow-up could have. He had exposed the lie without ever raising his voice. In a world where performance was everything, he had pulled the curtain back. No yelling. No courtroom scene. No shouting match in the kitchen. Just two images side by side, and a truth so sharp, it cut through every carefully staged filter Lena had built her life on. And as the dust settled, Derek finally felt something he hadn't in months. Freedom. There's a certain kind of silence that follows destruction. Not chaos, not grief, something cleaner. Something still. In the weeks after Derek's post detonated across every corner of Lena's curated world, that silence found him. No more late-night pacing. No more pretending. No more watching her smile with 1,000 lies tucked behind her teeth. The web had collapsed. The illusion had burned. And now, Derek stood in the center of the ashes, calm and fully awake. He waited exactly 1 week after the post to deliver the divorce papers. The timing wasn't accidental. He chose the anniversary of their wedding rehearsal. The day before the vows, when they had laughed through a storm and danced barefoot under string lights in his parents' backyard. That day had once meant something. Now, it was just a convenient marker for closure. He didn't knock on the door. He had the documents sent by courier, neatly packed, legally airtight. And inside, right on top of the paperwork, he'd placed a printed copy of the beach photo comparison. The image that had told the truth better than any courtroom ever could. It wasn't spiteful. It was final. A reminder that no amount of spin or performative tears could rewrite what was already etched into history. Lena tried to reach him after that. Not to apologize, those days were long gone, but to negotiate. She wanted to meet in person, discuss alternatives, frame things as less adversarial. She'd pivoted from her previous narrative of innocence to one of emotional confusion, claiming she wasn't herself, that things had become complicated. But Derek didn't flinch. He had already entertained every version of her story in his mind, and none of them held weight anymore. The case would proceed as it began, quiet, deliberate, undeniable. His lawyer walked into the courtroom with confidence, armed with every piece of evidence Lena had once thought invisible. Photos, emails, messages, timelines, each one linked precisely, presented without embellishment. The judge didn't need dramatics. The facts spoke for themselves. The look on Lena's face as the evidence was laid out wasn't one of shock, but of recognition. She knew she'd been caught. Knew she had no cards left. When she attempted to claim emotional damages, citing embarrassment and psychological distress from the post, her request was met with an incredulous glance and dismissed without further discussion. The court found no grounds to award spousal support. Her financial misconduct and infidelity nullified any leverage she might have had. Full ownership of the house was granted to Derek. He walked out of the courthouse not just legally free, but morally cleared in the eyes of everyone who mattered. And still, he didn't gloat. Instead, he went home, his home, now truly his, and began the slow process of reclaiming his space. The photos came down. The furniture was rearranged. Every trace of her was replaced not with bitterness, but with breathing room. He painted the guest bedroom, turned it into a workspace. He replaced the bed they'd shared with one of his own choosing. He even started keeping plants, something she used to mock him for. But the real change wasn't in the house. It was in him. He stopped checking her social media. Stopped replaying their conversations in his head. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore, it was peaceful. For the first time in years, he could sit in silence and feel something other than dread. He reflected often, though not with regret. More with clarity. He saw it now, how he had romanticized Lena's unpredictability, called it passion. How he had ignored the way she avoided accountability, choosing instead to believe in her independence. How he'd explained away the lies, dressed them up as quirks, and convinced himself that love meant loyalty, even when it was one-sided. He didn't hate her. Not really. But he no longer revered her either. The pedestal he had placed her on was long gone. He had loved a version of her that didn't exist, a projection, a promise, a story she was never committed to fulfilling. The real Lena had always been there, in small glimpses he chose to ignore. And now? Now he didn't need answers. He had them all. The truth wasn't messy. It had just been buried under a mountain of distractions. A year passed. The Facebook algorithm, always nostalgic, brought up the beach photo again. The same one. Same sun, same sand. A version of himself smiling into a camera, completely unaware of the world cracking behind his back. He stared at it for a moment. Not with anger. Not with pain. Just stillness. He didn't repost it. Instead, he closed the app, packed a small bag, and drove north to the mountains. Alone. No plan. No itinerary. Just clean air and unfamiliar trails. He hiked for hours through pine and fog, the terrain steep, the silence grounding. At the peak, he paused. The sun was setting. The sky, streaked with gold and ash, reminded him of that day on the beach, but it felt different now. Honest. Earned. He pulled out his phone and snapped a photo. In the shot, there was no one next to him. No arm around his waist. No second smile to complete the frame. Just a man standing alone on a mountain, wind pressing against his jacket, eyes steady on the horizon. Later, he posted it. No tags. No dramatic caption. Just 6 quiet words. Growth feels better than closure. And it did.